such a big crowd. Wonderful. In February, we really appreciate you turning out. There's a lot of people to thank for making this evening possible. Mainly, of course, our friend Melissa Newman. Thank you so much for being here, sharing your incredible talents with us. We're honored. Our board president, Joanne Wilcox, thank you for first thinking of the idea to partner with Melissa in this way in this evening's program. Thank you, Koki. Many other volunteers who've devoted their time and ideas to making this evening so special. Courtney Niels, Margaret Rick, Belinda Shepard. How about the amazing staff at Pequot Library? Not me. Hardly did much at all on this event. It's namely Grace Calderon, Charlie McMahon, Alex Heekin, Victoria Konopka, Jesse McEntee. Thank you guys. You guys are incredible. It's a joy to work with you all. Joy is joy, as Melissa said earlier this evening. Thank you for sharing that with us. This is a special treat, and the incredible honor of introducing Melissa has been given to my colleague, Charlie McMahon, our adult programs manager, who will now have the floor. Thank you all again for coming.
Hello, everybody. We've got a great crowd. Makes me so happy. Welcome to everyone this evening. As Stephanie said, my name is Charlie McMahon, and I serve as the Adult Programs Manager here at Pequot Library. It is my esteemed pleasure to present a woman and a family that truly needs no introduction. Melissa was blessed to be born into an artistic family. While focusing her efforts primarily on art and jazz, she is also an accomplished writer and third-generation educator. After starting a lucrative career singing jingles, Melissa became a teaching assistant at a women's correctional facility in New York. She continued in this role for almost 20 years, epitomizing a love and passion for education shared by many members of her family. As a visual artist, Melissa has designed everything from tattoos to theater posters, exhibiting her porcelain sculptures and paintings in galleries throughout New York and California. She also continues, as many of you heard, to tour with her jazz trio and quartet. Born in Los Angeles, Melissa was a child of two coasts, following her parents from Los Angeles to Connecticut and back again. Throughout this period, she attended 5 different schools before she reached 6th grade. After enrolling in 5 different colleges across 8 years, she attained a bachelor's degree focusing on art and education and graduated from Sarah Lawrence 1 year before her mother and little sister did as well. In 2002, Melissa and her husband, Raphael, purchased the Westport home originally bought by her parents in 1961. Paul and Joanne subsequently moved right next door, forming a contiguous hive of community and creativity, as well as a loving nest of mutual love for 3 generations of family. Melissa and Raphael have 2 sons who continue the proud traditions of various family members, appreciation, creativity, and consumption of art, all while continuing to teach and pass on their passions to others. Now, a quick word about Melissa's parents, who again don't really need an introduction from me, and the subjects of her new book, Head Over Heels, A Love Affair in Words and Pictures. Paul Leonard Newman was born in 1925 in Shaker Heights, Ohio. After the outbreak of World War II, Paul enlisted in the Navy, serving with heroism in the Pacific Theater. After the war ended, Newman earned his bachelor's degree in drama and economics from Kenyon College. Upon graduating, he studied at the Yale School of Drama before moving to New York to learn from the lauded acting teacher Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio. Following roles on Broadway, Paul moved to Hollywood, but not before meeting the love of his life, Joanne Woodward. Together, they embarked on the journey of a lifetime together. Joanne Woodward was born in Thomasville, Georgia in 1931. After majoring in drama at Louisiana State University, Woodward headed to New York City to begin her life on the stage. While serving as an understudy in the William Inge play Picnic, she met Paul. Paul Newman starred in such classic films as Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, The Hustler, Cool Hand Luke, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Verdict, as well as many, many others. He holds the distinction of being nominated for an Academy Award in 5 consecutive decades. Joanne Woodward achieved critical acclaim for her Academy Award-winning performance as the titular Eve in The Three Faces of Eve. She followed this up with lauded performances in The Fugitive Kind, Rachel, Rachel, Summer Wishes, Winter Dreams, the effect of gamma rays on Man in the Moon Margolis in Mr. and Mrs. Bridge. Together, they built a family in Westport, Connecticut, where they contributed greatly to the philanthropic benefit of their community. In 1982, Paul started Newman's Own, producing salad dressing, pasta sauce, lemonade, and so much more. All proceeds from Newman's Own are donated to charity. In 1988, Paul and Joanne founded the Hole in the Wall Gang, a residential camp for seriously ill children in Ashford, Connecticut. Before Melissa takes the stage, I'd like to once again thank so many of you for coming this evening. As a nonprofit organization, Pequot Library raises 80% of our budget from individual donations. So thank you all so much for your continued support. And as a reminder, Melissa will be signing books after this program, courtesy of Finley's Fiction. And now, without further ado, I'm done talking. Welcome Melissa Newman to the stage. Thank you, guys.
Did it. Hi, everybody. I'm just glad he didn't say that I'm an actor. It's like the one art form that I am smart enough not to pursue. In my Wikipedia, there are times when I've been introduced and my Wikipedia page conflates me with 2 other Melissa Newmans. And so I frequently get fan mail for my work in Perry Mason and Bonanza. And I always feel really, really bad. My goodness. It's like I just finished singing in there, and now I'm like shifting gears. I've never done like a back-to-back gig here. I guess I'll talk for a minute about why we made the book. Just talking to someone else who said they regretted not making a book about their parents, and I think it's so sad that we're not going to be discovering those shoe boxes full of snapshots anymore. You know, it's really something that's going to be lost to the ages. But I feel like anybody who has parents that grew up, you know, in this era or anything right up to my own is going to be could technically put together a book. And certainly pictures from the 50s and 60s, especially the 50s and the black and white photos, just so spectacular. So we have them all over our house. And my friend Andrew Kelly, who used to live in Westport on Cross Highway, he and I had talked about this for a long time and said, wouldn't it be great to put a book together? Of course, the reality, what's scary when you're me, when you put out into the world, you want to do a book about your parents, the next thing you know, you have a book deal and you have money and deadlines being thrown at you. Is terrifying. And so the delightful book that we thought, we'll just empty out the picture frames and we'll paste them in a book and it'll be real simple. It's not so simple when your parents were frequently photographed by people like Richard Avedon and Philippe Halsman. It becomes a whole different animal. So Andrew deserves so much credit for hunting down. First of all, he's an amazing eye. He's an amazing book editor. I was so lucky to know him. And he, hunting down all the photographs and negotiating the rights to all the pictures. So it was a lot of work that we didn't, but we both agreed it's the best work experience we've ever had in our life. We had our designer, Dan Miller. When we first we got the deal with Little Brown, they said, give us a bunch of photos and we'll give you a book. And my experience with the biography that came out about my dad, I felt like it was the editor's book more than the book that I had imagined. And so I kind of decided that I told Little Brown, I said, no, you're going to give us a bunch of money and we're going to give you a book. And I was really lucky. I learned things like letters of intent, because I kept saying, I have a team of 3 people. You have to hire these 3 people, or the 3 of us together, me, Dan, and Andrew. And they were like, well, he's at the top of the list of people we're considering. And I'm like, those are just words strung together. I now know they mean nothing. And they were very nice. They took a chance on us. And so when we handed in our manuscript, they said, they told Andrew he could teach a class. They said it was the most perfectly realized manuscript they'd ever seen. Like, all the T's were crossed, all the I's were dotted. I'm just blessed that I just happened to know him, and he makes beautiful books. I could just ramble on and on and on. So yes, we live in the house that my parents bought in 1961, the year I was born. And we bought it when my son was 2, and he is now 28, 27, 28, I can't remember. So there are a lot of pictures of my parents in the book that take place in our house. It's still our house. It still has all the same leaks and all the same pots and pans everywhere. All right, let's see what we have here. I'm going to start by saying that going through my mom's house and our house, she lives right next door to me in my grandmother's old house. And my parents moved when we moved in. It was very nice of them. And we did raise our children, like, was dreamy, just running back and forth between the grandparents' house, and that was pretty extraordinary. So when I was up in my mom's attic, going through attic that had been gone through a million times, and things were getting ready to be tossed, just odds and ends and stuff that was lying around, and I reached into a bag and I found what I think were probably the first 10 letters my dad ever wrote my mom. And I mean, this close to being thrown away in a ripped paper bag surrounded by dead mice and moths. I kid you not. Anyone who lives in an old house knows what I'm talking about. This is the kind of thing that he wrote in the letters. I shall lock myself in an abandoned water closet. I love you so very much, and shut my mouth and carry on in silent communion with your soul. Take notes, guys. And I thought, when I saw the letters, I thought, like, oh yeah, we'll print them up and we'll put them in the book, and it'll be so cute. And then so I did write a preface for the book. And I say in the preface that I had a moment where I'm holding these letters and I'm thinking, like, I really shouldn't. And then I, forget it. Like, of course, I opened them all up and I thought, this is so cute. We'll put them, maybe there's some we'll print up and put in the book. And I would be reading them and I'd think, Dad, this is so sweet. Isn't this sweet? And then all of a sudden I would say, Dad, we can't put this in the book. They were charmingly bawdy. They weren't, not smarmy, charmingly bawdy, but I was like, we had to draw the line somewhere. There's a privacy thing going on. So we never found my mom's letters. She was smart. Okay, so if you want to know what it's like to be the child of movie stars, who are also pretty down-to-earth folks, I put this picture in here. That's my sister Nell. And that is kind of a perfect example of this sort of dual existence that you have, where your parents are like these chameleons, that they have this persona and then they're also home. I mean, my dad's job, we always had 9 or 10 dogs and cats, and my sister hunted with predatory birds. We had frozen baby chicks in the freezer that would freak our friends out when they opened up to get ice cream. Interesting life. Lot skunks. You could order animals out of the back of a comic book. Does anybody remember that? Like, I don't want to think about it. But we had a lot of them. So my dad's job. So we'd like lining the counters with like dog food cans, and we the kids would have to take turn feeding all the dogs and everything. And my dad's job. And he was an inventor of sorts. People don't know this about him. He invented many, many interesting and useful to him things. His job was getting the dog poo off the lawn. So, and the way he would do it, because nothing was simple, the way he would do it is that he would take a house shingle, and you got to try this. Take a house shingle, and you use the skinny end to just sort of flick the dog poo like into the woods. And he would actually go out there and do that. Another one of his my favorite things, and I actually found it, which is hysterical. Okay, so this is gonna go on all night. You guys feel free to leave. Okay, so you can leave already, right? So the way he thought it was a good idea he would always do the Christmas tree and put the lights on the Christmas tree. He would stick a spatula that you split pancakes with. He would stick the flat end down the front of his pants. Stay with me. And so the handle of the spatula would be sticking out, and then he would loop the Christmas lights around the handle, and then he would stand on a foot ladder. And our old houses, this is exactly how tall our roof is. I mean, our ceiling. And the little wire that he stuck up there to hold the top of the Christmas tree so it wouldn't fall over is still there. But yeah, so then he would go around and he would feed the wires up. And I'll tell you one more thing, that he had a sauna, and he liked to read the paper in the sauna, but the glasses would burn his nose. So he made a wire halo wrapped with tissue paper and duct tape. And then he took a pair of reading glasses and took the sides off and connected it to a thing that stuck out like this. And the reading glasses would be like this, and all of duct tape and baling twine. And I totally inherited this from him too. This way of thinking. Bless you. And they're like, they've melted like this. So that's an heirloom. I don't know what to do with it, but my other favorite heirloom is that my mother made my dad a glasses case in Petty Point that's shaped like a Budweiser can. So this is my mother, this is like mommy is dressed to go out. And this is the mother that, oh no, I'm sorry, I always do this. This follows. We had so much fun deciding like what quotes went with what images. Stars are people who are immediately recognizable, who bring their own mystique, their own essence to whatever role they play. Paul is a star. I think I'm a character actress. Nobody recognizes me when I walk down the street, and I can have a hard time getting checks cashed. And we paired this with a very sexy picture of my mom wearing a black bustier. We had so much fun pairing, we wanted to make it unusual the way the pictures are paired with the text and the way the pictures are paired with each other. So pay attention to that. If you have the book, it's a kind of a slow burn. You'd be like, I don't know why they put this with this. And then like, hopefully it'll be a sort of a subliminal thing. And that's kind of what we wanted. We didn't want chronological because that's boring. So we really just made an art book where we just had fun deciding like what images. Sometimes an image from 1957 would go with an image from 1986. All right, so this is the mother that I know. All right, that is Caroline Murphy, one of the most spectacular human beings that ever walked the planet. She deserves her own book. And that is our kitchen, and that is our sink, which is still there. We only replaced the faucet last year. That spoon is the dog food spoon. I know where most of that stuff is. It's hanging there. My mother, one time I was saying something about washing dogs in the sink, and somebody else was there. I don't know who it was, but my mother said, I've never washed a dog in the sink in my life. Like, I don't know who she was trying to impress. And I'm thinking that's funny because I think there's a picture of you doing that. So my mom was amazing. So I don't know if people know this, but so she won her Academy Award in 1957. Way before my dad was kind of on the radar. And when she went to the Academy Award, it was so earlier in her career, she didn't have enough money for a dress. But what she didn't have enough money for was fabric. So she bought green silk and she made a dress strapless with a ball gown with a jacket lined in green silk with a portrait collar. And she made it. And Joan Crawford, who was definitely a bitch and a mean bitch, as my mother would say. Although my mother was named after her, which is interesting, except when you're down south, it's Joanne. So Joan Crawford said that my mother set fashion back 100 years by making her own dress. I guess she didn't know about Etsy, So here's my mom, being my mom, who also was a movie star, ran the Westport Country Playhouse, as I'm sure you know, ran an acting class, which spawned people like Allison Janney and Dylan McDermott, all these actors that came through her acting class. but she also got up and made French toast for us every morning and fed us vitamins and argued with everybody and had to, she was the mom that knew where everybody was, just like a lot of moms, and drove people around. And like, I don't know how she had the time to do that, but when she was home, she was mom, and you didn't mess with her either. That's our house. And that is a recent picture from 2000. My friend Wayne took this picture. Wayne Saville, I forgot to mention to him when I made the book. I was like, Wayne, I used a picture that you took in a book. And he said, okay, so I give him some money. He's a nice guy. He stays at our house all the time. It was pretty even. So that's the house. And, there's the river, the Aspetuck River. And my parents literally live on the other side. My dad built a footbridge. The town of Westport, he wanted to just rebuild a little bridge that had been there right over the dam. And the town of Westport, I don't know, they were doing that thing they do. They let people build crazy stuff, and then they get after you for silly stuff. And they said, you have to build it at the 50-year high water mark. And my dad was like, okay. So there were plans for that. And then they took it back and they said, well, no, 100-year high water mark. And he's like, okay. So we ended up with this footbridge that looks like a mini Golden Gate suspension bridge in the back of our, and I remember once Peter, when my son, when he was like 4 or so, ran out the back door. I couldn't find him anywhere. Ran across the bridge, which had no mesh on the sides. It's really terrifying, and it's pretty far above the water. It's kind of spectacular. And I gave him a hard time for it, but honestly, once they moved across the river and I had babies, it was pretty amazing. But Peter runs across the bridge. I couldn't find him anywhere. I'm calling, and I finally call over to the other house, and I said, is Peter there? And they said, oh yeah, he's like standing on a stool making cookies. And I thought, when a toddler walks into your house unaccompanied by an adult, I think it might be nice to place a little phone call or something. This is one of the reasons why we had to make the book. Everywhere my father went, everywhere he ever lived, we had walls like this. In his house, in their apartment in New York, like everywhere. My dad would walk around with a hammer and a mouthful of nails. And, the pictures would sort of morph in and out. And so, we grew up, I grew up surrounded by these images. And it's so interesting because as I evolve, the pictures evolve, the way that they look at me, the way I look at them evolves. You can see that picture of my dad on the horse. And then if you go to the right, you can see a picture of my mom. Well, you can see her that's in her dress from the Academy Awards. You got to look it up. It's stunning. But down to the lower right, there's a picture of my mom wearing nothing but fishnet stockings and balloons. And, when you have pictures, these are our family photos, right? So people would come into our house. I lived in a house in Fairfield, actually on Hillside Road. Great old house for a little while. Because my parents were dog in the manger. Like most movie stars have, they'll have a house, in Paris and an island here and there. My parents had 2 houses on either side of a river. And for a while, they always wanted me to live in one of them. And then I had babies, and I was like, I had a baby, and I said, okay, is it time? And they got all dog in the manger. They were like, not ready yet. So then I went and we bought this house, and my husband and I bought this house in on Hillside Road, and we lived there for 2 years. And then my parents were like, you should move in now. I'm like, I just bought a couch and like all this other stuff. So, and really, honestly, all the furniture in this house is from 1961, all the couches, everything. We just slip covered. We finally realized that we could actually replace the cushions. Because, 1961, they were like butter pats, so we kept getting slip covers for them, like my mom. And I was like, I think we can have an upgrade. But the couches are still, there's a picture of my mother sleeping on a couch. I'm like, I know where those slip covers are. I know where that couch is. Okay. Oh my God, we were going to be here all night. I did drink coffee before I came here. Sometimes that's okay. So when I was living on Hillside Road, I had only that picture of my dad and that picture of my mom wearing balloons and stockings and my dad as a cowboy. And people would come to me, kids, baby groups or whatever, and they'd come over and they'd be like, who are these people? And they didn't know anything about me. And I'd say, they're my parents. And then I'd just walk away. Okay, there's my dad. We had 2 copies of these snapshots, just like it always seems like it came so close to them not ending up in the book because we found them later. I found them in a drawer that I don't want to think about the things that we missed, because every time I looked in a drawer, it seemed like they multiplied like bunnies. But so there are two of these. There's one of my dad being serious, and there's one of we could only choose one. So of course we chose this one. And that's me, looking the way an 8-year-old girl does when she's got all the attention on her. These photographs were taken. So now we get into my parents' relationship. So my parents, my dad was married to a woman named Jackie Witt, and she was, they were married. They were both kind of trying to escape the Midwest, and they got married and they had 3 kids. And I don't think their relationship probably would have lasted. I think they were on, they did what people did. They got married and they had children. And unfortunately, when my dad met my mom, it was kind of game over. I mean, that was kind of his destiny. And it wasn't easy, that the relationship, there's no myth there that was that it was easy to have a romance in Hollywood. But so, they were together for a long time when my dad was still married. And I like to be honest about that, because I have I have 2 sisters that I'm still very close to from the other marriage. But my sister Steph came and lived with us when she was 14, and she always says that my mom saved her life, and she has my mom's name tattooed on her arm. That's love. So these pictures were taken by Stuart Stern, who is probably one of the most important photographers as far as I'm concerned in the book, because he was their closest friend. He met my father 12 days before my father met my mother, and he fell madly in love with my father. And then my dad met my mom, and then Stuart was really jealous. And then he became best friends with my mother. And I really think the glue that held their relationship together was the frustration of loving my father. I think they would just get together and dish about that. Everyone needs a friend like that, right? So, but Stuart had such an intimate, these are really early. This is 1956. They didn't get married until 1958. So these are really early pictures. And Stuart wrote the screenplay for Rebel Without a Cause, and for Rachel, which is also like family project. Everyone who worked on that film and they filmed it right in Georgetown and Bridgeport, just like Effective Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds, very local. Those were the real artisanal, sort of like, the kinds of films that people make now that are small and artisanal. So Stuart had, the real, I think this is like, sneaking away to Vermont. Stuart's favorite thing besides my dad was cows. So this was a banner day for him. Cows, Peter Pan, elephants, and my parents. And he was an extraordinary man. My middle name is Stuart. My son's middle name is Stuart. He was my sister's godfather. And so he took the cover picture, and there's a whole series. And we put the contact sheets in there of a lot of stuff. This is a telegram that my dad, and I'm not going to be able to read it. It says, "Forgot to mail your letter." I can't read it. It's a love telegram. It's a love telegram from my dad that says basically like he forgot to mail a letter today, so he felt so guilty about it that he sent her a telegram. I know, right? This is another one, like really early. He fell really hard, and my mom was sort of she was the bohemian that he longed to be. He was like a frat boy from Ohio who really wanted to be, he thought like, oh, he really wanted to be like Marlon Brando and James Dean with all the complexity and all the darkness. But the thing about my dad is also he was a workaholic. He never was late to work a day in his life. And so when people thought like, we don't want to risk hiring Marlon Brando because, they would hire my dad because they knew he'd show up and he'd do the job even when he was always prepared. Another quote from the letter: no one sings like Woodward, or acts like Woodward, or bitches like Woodward, or kisses like Woodward, or talks like Woodward, or talks as long as Woodward, or wipes water out of her eyes like Woodward, or smiles like Woodward, or cusses like Woodward. No one is as theatrical as Woodward, or changes like Woodward, or listens like Woodward, or laughs or cries or hiccups, or nothing like Woodward. You is a special, a super, an unbeatably, an absolutely unbeatable wench, and I love you. Dad. This is called Women I Like to Sleep With, because my dad had this strange habit of, like, he loved putting little plaques on things. So he was also very fond of early American children's portraits. You know, the ones that, like, there'd be like a room in their apartment in New York that was full of early American children's portraits. And you know how creepy those things are. They're like, like, you turn around and you're like, so he had a whole bunch of those. They were like his chosen relatives. But he would put little plaques on the bottom of everything, and, you know, name it like Newman, McNewmanus, or what. He was such a goofball. He was such a sorry, I should know better as a singer. He was such a punny. That Ohio sensibility, his whole family, they were all Jewish intellectuals, really smart and really, like, punny. So his uncle Joe wrote doggerel poetry, but also like rhyming verse, but always referencing things like Greek mythology and physics. So that's kind of what he came from. But so at the bottom of this, there's a little plaque that says, "Women I Like to Sleep With." This is while filming Rachel. They filmed part of it in Danbury. So Stuart Stern wrote the screenplay. I think honestly that my mom, he admired my mother as an actor. That never ended. He admired her forever and ever and ever, through all the difficulties. And they do say that in Hollywood, if you can survive the first year and the first infidelity, you're probably good to go. But, and they proved that. And so, but he really spent his entire life, once his trajectory took off, because she was already there. And she did kind of put herself on hold in ways that I don't think she would have if she had married somebody else. And, she's taking care of kids and doing a lot of stuff and took that stuff seriously. I always like to tell people she had natural childbirth and she nursed all her babies at a time when people were not doing that. They were being convinced to do otherwise. So this is my dad. There were letters that I found to Dee Dee Allen. So everybody who worked on this movie worked for nothing. They were all like amazing actors, Estelle Parsons, like all these incredible people, worked for nothing. This was a labor of love, just like the other movie Marigolds was. And it was local. My dad always lamented the fact that later on, he said people would come to do films and they would just open up they open up their briefcase, they do their job, and then they go home. He's like, we used to just get together. It was more like theater. Like, there was a lot of rehearsing, a lot of discussing the psychology of the characters. They would get together and barbecue and discuss the work, and it was all a seamless experience. And that was really what these films were like. And he was nominated for an Academy Award this was his first directing job. I think it was nominated for several awards, but I can't remember which ones. So I found these letters from my dad to Dee Dee Allen, and between Dee Dee Allen and Stuart Stern. Dee Dee Allen was a very, very famous film editor, and he talked her into working on the film. And she said it was the most extraordinary experience she ever had movie making. She originally didn't want to do it, and then she was so glad that she did. But so he didn't want to film this scene, and Stuart and Dee Dee Allen were talking, and Stuart's like, I wrote the scene, it's so important, and it needs to be filmed. And Dee Dee Allen was like, I know, we have to talk him into it. And Stuart was like weeping. And I just think my dad was jealous. He kept saying, like, it could be obscured in some way or referenced in some other way, or, and then I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, like, this looks like a man who's just going like, you can touch her here, but not here. You can touch her here, but not here. And like, when you shoot pool and you have to keep one foot on the floor, right? So I love this picture so much. How weird though. You know, it's weird enough seeing we grew up seeing our parents like kiss other people in the movies, which is really weird. And but then to be directing your wife in a love scene with another man, it's all very complicated. This picture of my mother, I put this in here because this was an important picture to us. We were very naughty children. The great thing about living in the house you grew up in is that there's nothing that my kids could ever do where we didn't just go like, get out of the attic and turn the exhaust fan off. I know exactly what you're doing. Like they couldn't run, they couldn't hide. There was just, they'd be like, but how does she always know? And I'd be, they didn't need to know how we knew. We were so insanely bad. You do get, it is the revenge of having children. I think my parents were absolutely delighted watching me navigate that. So this picture, I always thought like this was my mom scowling at us and telling us to behave, and it went everywhere. But honestly, when I made the book, I realized 1957, my dad took this picture and it didn't have anything to do with children. Just saying. This is my favorite quote of the whole book. I thought Paul was grossly untalented when I first met him. I remember going to dinner with Kim Stanley when we were all doing picnic together in Cleveland and saying to her, God, it's a good thing Paul Newman is handsome because he certainly can't act. And we paired this with a great photograph by Philippe Halsman of my mother helping my dad do a handstand. You'll have to see. I think my dad was, my mom sort of came out of the womb knowing what she wanted to do and how to do it. And my dad really had to work at it in the same way that he had to work to be a race car driver. And I think that the reason that my dad loved racing so much is that, art is subjective. Race cars, you're a race car, you can be judged by a stopwatch. End of story. And my dad wasn't a great racer to begin with, but he was really tenacious about anything he cared about. And the race car drivers genuinely appreciated he was really fast. They appreciated his talent. They appreciated his commitment. And he just felt like that appreciation was more genuine than anything and more, that he was ever going to get from acting, where he used to say, that his epitaph would read, "Here lies Paul Newman, who died of failure because his eyes turned brown." Those are the letters. Can you believe I stuck like this close to going in the garbage, right? Those are the letters, and then next to them is a small selection of telegrams that were sent to my mother when she won her Academy Award. And I would just say that my dad spent the rest of his life looking for projects to really show the world how extraordinary my mother was, and hence all the movies they did together, all the way up to Mr. and Mrs. Bridge. I mean, I really felt like he was like, no, it's her, But so that top one is from Ingrid Bergman. Another one. These were in the same bag, so that bag almost went in the garbage. And there's one from a letter from Carl Malden in the back, and the stack was like this big of telegrams. I love telegrams. Telegrams are amazing, and they should come back. And I have to say, our friend Joan Crawford, I found a blue envelope that looked like it had been opened once and closed, and that was it. It looked fresh as the day. She stuck it in the envelope, said, "Dear Joanne, congratulations on your award. I've heard so much about your great willingness to learn." Nasty. What a horrible woman. I always say if I had to have movie stars for parents, I am glad I got the ones I got. And just ponder that for a minute. Try to come up with anyone, scary. I'll tell you another story about our pots and pans, leaky old farmhouse that we live in, which is now the smallest house on the block and the only one that doesn't have like a giant electric gate, ironically. Sylvester Stallone came to our house to have a meeting with my dad. When my dad lived there early on, they were talking about making a film. And so we were very close to the Parks driver service guys who drove the cars. So they picked up Sylvester Stallone and his guys. They got in the back seat and they were driving. And so I heard this from one of the drivers. He said, Sylvester Stallone got in after being in our house, the house we live in now, got in the back seat and the driver was driving them back to the airport, and Sylvester Stallone said to his guys, "Who would ever think Paul Newman would live in a shitbox like that?" And I would like to have that chiseled over my front door. So I want him to come out of the woodwork someday and try to refute that. I think it's probably true. My dad on his wedding, the morning of his wedding, it's really not a lot you can say about this. Stuart Stern made the loveliest little book of really beautiful, intimate pictures of my parents with a little spiral bound with cardboard. It's so charming. And this is one of the pictures in it. We just actually went, my parents got married in Vegas at the Little White Chapel, and we just were in Vegas doing a book event, and we went to the Little White Chapel and got a tour of the Little White Chapel. It's pretty crazy that they did that. And also, their agents were upset because my parents just wanted to sneak off and do it, and their agents said, like, no, you have to have other people there. And so they invited these random people. So like Edie Gourmet and Steve Allen were there, and like just like random people that just happened to be in Vegas. So it looked more like a whatever. Anyways, okay, I didn't even look. This picture's been hanging like at every house we've ever lived in, and I was like, well, what do what do I have to say? What do I have to say about anything? A lot, apparently. This picture was. I feel like this is like, a lot of people might have an idea to do something like this, but like most people wouldn't ever, like it would never happen for people. But when you're a movie star, people will actually make it happen for you, which is crazy. And my sister Nell pointed out to me, she's like the best angler. She can out-hunt, out-fish, and out-drive any guy I know. She still owns a 65 Mustang that she bought when she was 19 and had the engine bored out. She is the one that hunts with predatory birds. My little sister Clay is the most extraordinary horseback rider. I have like amazing, amazing sisters. So she pointed out that behind my dad, see the tuna behind my dad? Not the sailfish. And see the little sneakers? And then the little hat? That's my sister Nell, holding a sizable tuna. It's like half the size of her. And she got that herself. And she is still fly fishing, ocean fishing, you name it. She is extraordinary. Now she has hunting dogs, and she just hunts all the time. I'm like, what do you do with all those pheasants? She said she made pheasant tacos the other day. I'm like, that is a stretch. Okay, I think what describes Joanne's feeling about my racing was a headline once in the New York Post that said, "Newman escapes death, Joanne furious." My dad basically like didn't actually own Lime Rock, but owned Lime Rock. It was surprising if he'd go up there and he didn't win. And he is the oldest. He is in the Guinness World Book of Records for being the oldest guy to win a nationally sanctioned auto race, the 24-hour race at Daytona. He was on the winning team. He won his last race almost exactly a year to the day before he passed away. He was 83. He always had his age painted on the side of his car. And he won up at Lime Rock. I don't know if Michael Brockman, who lived was his best bud. We used to call my dad Mr. Brockman. But Michael Brockman was, he and Brock like duked it out. And I asked Brock, I said, did you lift your foot off the pedal? And he said no, but he won that race on September 29th of 07, and he passed away on September 26th of 08. He was fast. I'm almost done, you guys. There are a surprising number of photographs of my dad shaving. I don't know what that is all about. This one is taken by Stuart Stern, and you can actually see his arm in the back. There's another one by another famous photographer, but there's another one by Philippe Halsman where we had to get permission because you can actually see Philippe Halsman taking the picture in the mirror, and usually they crop it out, and we're like, no, we want to see Philippe Halsman. So we had to get special permission. Photographers were so extraordinarily generous with us when they found out we were doing this project. One photographer besides Stuart that I thought was really, oh geez, am I gonna forget his name? Oh no, Larry Schiller, Lawrence Schiller. I asked Andy. Andy made all the phone calls, the contacts, and negotiated all the rights. Like, we put the whole book together, we sourced the photographs together, but he's the one who negotiated. And I said, Andy, you got to call Larry Schiller. Is my favorite photograph of my dad is he's lifting up my mom's skirt, and my mom's just looking really bashful, and she's holding her skirt down, and he's just looking like a goofy frat boy. And so I said, you have to call Lawrence Schiller, and I said, well, how did it go? Because he called him and he said, oh God, he said he seems very frail, and he seems like he might be a little bit, you know, I don't know, maybe a little difficult to work with. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure this is going to work out. And I said, can you try him one more time? So the next day he tried him. I said, how did it go? He said, I had the best conversation with Larry Schiller. He told me that he wouldn't have been a photographer if it wasn't for your father. Your dad was the first guy to believe in him. He gave him his first jobs. He wants to cut us an amazing deal on all these photographs. So he probably has as many photographs as my dad, Lawrence Schiller, all the photographs of my parents at Grauman's Chinese Theater. Like, we were like, when in doubt, if you don't know who took it, it's probably Larry Schiller. But yeah, so crazy. My dad shaving. But this is the best picture ever of anyone ever shaving that was ever taken by anyone. He and Stuart, my dad had matching bracelets. Stuart's was given to him when my parents were sneaking around. And you know, like I always say, with great respect to Jackie Witt, because she was there for the hard times. And then my mom, you know, he and my mom got married, and then they both went like this. And Jackie had wanted to be an actor too, so that was really rough. But that Stuart's bracelet says to Stuart, scratched onto it, it's to Stuart from the Bobbsey twins, because I think that was like a code name. There's my mom on the couch. That couch is in our living room with new cushions. I do know where those slipcovers are. My mom and I never met a chintz we didn't like. We used to go to a place in Monroe, I think it's still there, called Chintz and Prince. If you like Fabric Warehouse, unbelievable. So we used to walk around it like it was an art gallery. And my dad, for some reason, he would order multiples of anything he liked. So he was always like making the best dress list, which is weird because he was colorblind and didn't really care. He just had like some nice things, and when he found something he liked, he would order 10 of them, like a nice cashmere sweaters, and he would have the same pair of pants remade over and over and over again, and white canvas sneakers, and it was just so elegant. He also wore a orange jumpsuit, a flight suit, that with white socks and boat shoes, and for some reason on him, they looked really good. I can't imagine anyone else could pull that off. So he would buy multiples of things. I opened a drawer up and I found like 200 copies of this photograph, and he took this picture, and that's my mom, and I think it's Harry, and he's wearing a needlepoint collar that my mom made him, and oh my gosh, so yeah, I don't know why he had 100 copies of this photograph. I don't know what he was going to do with it, like wallpaper a bathroom or something. But so I do love this picture, and this one is paired in the book with a photograph that is from 1957, and you'll have to look in the book and you'll get it. You'll be like, okay, I can see, think about why we paired certain things with other things. Some of them are super obvious, some not so much. This is the last photograph. And I'm okay taking questions if we have time, and if you shout them out, yes, we're good. There's nothing I won't answer, and I'll try to keep it short. And just do try to make sure that it's a question, because I know that I hear so many wonderful stories. You can tell me a little story, but if we want to get questions in, that would be good. But if you have a story you're dying to tell, you got to tell it.
Guys, we're going to do like a microphone Q&A, so I'm just going to grab the mic, and then if you have a question for Melissa, please raise your hand and we'll get the mic to you.
That's you. Cheers. People's response to my talk is either like, will she never leave, or I could listen to you all night. There's really no middle ground. If you have to go, it's okay.
We have a question right here.
Hey, Lucy.
Hi.
How's your mom doing?
She, my mom was diagnosed with dementia about 15 years ago, so it's been a rough go. And what's interesting, and as I said, there's nothing I won't answer. Her mother had dementia also, but what's amazing is that she lives right across the river with the footbridge, so we get to see her all the time. My husband, sorry, God, that's so creepy when you do that. I love him so much. He actually goes and reads to her and the caregivers like a few times a week. My little sister visits her all the time. She gets visits from people a lot. Even now, she's definitely, I don't know, every time we think she's fading, she comes home and she raises an eyebrow. I'm like, Lassie, what are you trying to tell me? But I go hang out. I put my, I hang out with her, and she's got caregivers that are like angels from heaven. And I'll just share something with you that I always felt that my dad couldn't survive without my mom, and that my mom would have been fine without my dad. And if she hadn't had dementia, she probably would have married like someone else, someone a little simpler, probably. Like we always wanted to marry. There's a Parks driver named Kenny Webble who we just loved, and we thought like Mom and Kenny are so cute together. They both like trains. It would be so easy. But so when my mom was diagnosed with dementia, my dad literally got his diagnosis for cancer like right after. And I literally think it's because he just said, no. And they removed part of his lung and they said, you're so strong. You're amazing. We got everything. You're going to be fine. And then he's like, nope, I'm not, because I'm going to get another kind of cancer. He was like, I'm out. And I knew I couldn't handle it. And I really feel that's what happened. And my poor mom, and then she had to like deal with him being sick. And it was really hard. But all I can say is that for many, many, many moons now, she's been very happy. And her caregivers, I mean, I have like a whole family in Jamaica now. Literally, my husband and I go visit, like just the two of us go visit one of his caregivers and stay with her on her farm in Jamaica. Like and this will be forever. Like, so we have like, and caregivers, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's, yeah. Okay, that was a really long answer. Another question? Hey. Oh. The question is, did I ever want to race cars? Okay, we're all really fast drivers. I'm ashamed to say that I do not even drive a stick shift. I'm like I think all of my sisters except for my sister Susan, my sister Nell. It's amazing that we're still alive because the Mustang, whew, she absolutely stunning and trailed by men. Just, she had her short hair and she's just totally unaware. And she's just like out hunting, out driving, out fishing everybody, driving 90 miles an hour, couldn't see over the hood. Like Bayberry Lane used to have that hill. I know, that hill that would go like, and somebody had painted a bullseye on it. And we used to just go up and over like, it's amazing we're still alive. So she's really fast. My little sister Claire drives stick. She drives really fast too. We have the tickets to prove it. The great thing about living in Westport and, for so long was that like, I would have literally, like, I don't know what I would have had to do to get a ticket. There was nothing more frustrating for cops than to pull over one of the Newman girls because they'd just be like, oh, geez, like, what am I gonna do? So my sister Nell went to actually this, I think it was it Bondurant or Skip Barber who does the racing. She went to racing school. Yeah. So yeah, if one of us was gonna go all the way, it would have been her. Whew. Yeah. So all right. Any more questions?
I've got a question for you. Thank you so much for sharing. This is awesome. So my question is really around home movies.
Yeah.
What did you do in the home movie category?
Oh my gosh. That was like, did we all do that where we would sit around and watch, like you'd have your little TV trays and you'd watch the home movies and stuff like that. And I said, if anybody saw the documentary that Ethan Hawke did over COVID, which was a hot mess of wonderfulness, but it was his hot mess. And like we commissioned it, and it was Emily Wachtel, who lives in Westport, is a friend of the family, and she's the producer who produced it. And she's the one who said, what about Ethan Hawke? He loves your parents. And I was like, okay. And I love what he did. So if you haven't seen it, it's on Max, but there are home movies in that. But yeah, we would sit around. My mother would make omelets. My mother only knew how to make hollandaise sauce, omelets. Wait, some other eggy things. It's like amazing that we all lived. And my dad just like steak and salad and hamburgers, and like we're still alive. I don't know what kind of diet that is, but yeah, absolutely. If you think about like listen to this. That's the projector. Did everyone have like a little Proustian response? Where you just like sit there, and I want to do that too. I want to go around. There is a guy that he collects old movies, and I want to just like go to bars and show my parents films on a projector like that. Let me know if someone wants to help me organize that. Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, hi, I want to piggyback on the thank you. Really wonderful tonight.
Thank you.
My question is, I love the photograph of your dad where he's in the river in the winter at the preserve, at the Newman Poses Preserve up there.
Right.
And is there any story about your dad swimming in the river or his relationship to that preserve, or just any highlight from that you could be willing to share? Thank
Yes. You think I don't have a story? That was a question. Which one? He would get in the sauna. He had a sauna, and he would get in the sauna with the melty glasses and the halo weird thing that he made. And he would get in the sauna until he was red as a lobster, and then he would chop holes in the ice for him. So that picture was actually taken right down from our house, right where that photograph of the house is. We would chop holes in the ice for him, and he would jump in because he was an idiot. And my mom didn't do it, neither did I. And I remember and I'm riffing now too. So I used my dad's ice skates. I have really big feet. I used my dad's ice skates from Slapshot for a really long time, and his hockey skates. And back when the river would still freeze, it was a while ago, I remember we shoveled off the river, and my dad was walking over the bridge, and he saw me skating, and he said, "Are those my skates?" And I said, "Yeah," and he goes, and like he hadn't put on skates. He was in his, 70s, late 70s, and he hadn't put on skates in a while. And so he said, "Take them off, I want to skate." And I was like, "No way, Dad, not going to do it." And he's like, "Come on." And so I took off the skates, and I gave him the skates, and he took off down the river like he just skated yesterday. And yeah, absolutely, all the time, like a crazy person. Yeah, and there's several pictures of him doing that. He was nuts. Okay, again, anyone else?
My question was his relationship with Robert Redford, and then they like to drive together, and he would come to Westport, but I think I recall a story about a Volkswagen with a Porsche engine in it.
Yes.
You could elaborate on that.
Be careful what you wish for. My dad likes stealth cars, and I always like that. I don't go for the obvious, who needs the red Ferrari or the black Porsche with the whale tail. My dad he had several stealth cars. One of them was a Volkswagen Beetle with a Porsche engine in it, because in the 70s, I think, because he would love pulling up to a light, and people would pull up next to him and be like, "Oh, what's Paul Newman doing driving a car like that?" And then he would just floor it and leave them in the dust, and their mouths would be open. And then he had a Volvo station wagon with a Buick racing engine in it, which he convinced actually several people, including Dave Letterman and a couple of other people. And Jay Leno, I think, has one. He convinced other people to get them, but like you could hear my dad coming home, like when he was 10 minutes away, he'd be like, "Dad, I'll be home in about 10 minutes. My son installed like an insane sound system. He like mowed lawns and bought himself a sound system and like installed it himself. It was great, except he had a little wiring problem. It would drain the battery, but that's the DIY thing. But you could hear him 10 minutes before. You could hear him 20 minutes before he came home. But anyway, so my dad, what I love about my dad with the stealth cars is that my mother had a watch that my dad gave him, my dad gave her, a Patek Philippe watch, and it didn't work very well. So she took out the guts and replaced them with Timex guts. And then my dad would drive these like really low key cars that had racing engines in them. And I just I like the synergy of that. I don't know why. It says something about both of them. And Robert Redford, there was also a thing where my dad they would prank. My dad was a terrible prankster, and I'm talking like heavy duty. He walked into somebody's, George Roy Hill, the director, was one of his best friends, if not his best friend, walked into George's office. I think it was George, and sawed his desk in half with a chainsaw. Those are the kinds of pranks. So Bob Redford delivered a junk car to my dad's driveway, a junk Porsche, I think. And then my dad had it cubed and got the real estate agent to let him in and left it in Bob Redford's living room. So they would have been the only reason that they weren't even better friends, they love working together, was that my dad was always on time and always prepared, and Bob Redford was always really, really, really late, whether it was lunch or work or anything. So that was like a real difference in personality, but they deeply, deeply loved each other. So that. We can have one more, two more.
It's hard to say.
I'll try to keep it short.
Lizzie, I want to thank you for your art, your music, your storytelling, your
Thank you.
authorship. I had the front row seat to work at Hole in the Wall game
Yes,
for
you did.
over a decade. And, I also think philanthropy is an art. And what you've done and your family has done to save lives, to change lives of, children battling disease. You made the comment, I was lucky of all the notable people that these were my parents. If we all sat here in this room and we named thousands of people with a platform, there's one that we would say made sustainable impact, hundreds of millions of dollars, life saved, life changed. I've seen your kids do this. You've done this. Like it's so unique and it's so rare. And if people in the room don't know about Hole in the Wall gang, I mean, look it up. It's beautiful, but I guess
I actually usually do talk about Hole in the Wall, like depending on where my mind wanders. And I definitely, what I usually say is it's probably the purest iteration of his legacy, that if you want to have a beautiful moment in your day in a world that's, pretty traumatized at this point, look up the Hole in the Wall gang camp, look up the Healing Feeling videos, particularly on YouTube. It's camp for kids with life-threatening diseases, where you're likely to see, a pile of prosthetics legs on the ground underneath a climbing wall. I mean, we have kids can receive all kinds of really intense treatments while they're, and then get up in the morning and go do camp. Kids will say, I can't swim because I have a port, and we'll be like, oh no, we just plug it up and we wheel you right into the pool. Like, it is the most joyous, extraordinary place. So just a shout out, and that usually does come up. So I'm really glad you brought it up. So
I just wanted to thank you, and it's amazing work that you do. And there's not a question, but I guess the question is,
I'm glad you brought it up.
yeah,
though.
it's what made you and your family different than everybody else, and it's generations and legacy. What drove that desire to make it bigger than yourself?
I mean, I'm just, with my father, I think it was the whole issue of luck, that he never felt like he deserved what he got. He was always, suspect of that, especially because I said, art is subjective. And he just, so he said in the book, I Will Sing Life, which is a beautiful book, a poetry book that came out about Hole in the Wall. He said, I wanted to try to level the playing field a little bit for kids that weren't as lucky as I was, and that, didn't have a lifetime to. And we had, in the beginning, we had kids from Chernobyl. We had, and now there are 30 camps. I think the Serious Fund Children's Network, I think there are 30 camps. They're all over the world, and they're so extraordinary. I am so glad, because it never occurs to me, if I make any money from this book, and please spread the word. Of course, someone said, well, what are you going to do with the money? I'm like, what do you think I'm going to do with the money? Like, there's no way I would want to keep money that, had to, using my parents' images. Like, so I get to give that money away, which is extraordinary. And I'm just really lucky that my kids, like my son is teaching in Harlem right now. My other son, we all just live that way. My husband was a foster care social worker in Brooklyn. I mean, we just, it never occurs to us to not be that way. And if there's extra, you always give it away. So, and I'm just really, really lucky I was raised that way because I can't imagine being raised any other way. So it just, yeah, I'm so lucky. Then we have one more, and I swear to God, that's it. Okay.
Well, I hope mine isn't too personal, but I was wondering when you realized that your parents had such a great love affair, having children of my own, I'm wondering if they think, oh, my parents are madly in love. And also how that affected the ability to find a man, because, sometimes we look for father figures, the men that we choose. And having seen you, though, I'm new to the area, and I live in Hillside Road. I didn't know we were former neighbors. But having seen you at the VFW post, it does look like watching your husband when you sing, that you found somebody that idolizes you, perhaps like your father idolized your mother.
I'm the luckiest girl in the world. I really am. Yeah, my boyfriend slash husband. Yeah, anyone who hasn't been to the VFW for jazz on Thursday night, that's where I'm headed after I do this. If I don't talk for so long that the second set will already be over. Jazz, VFW, every Thursday night, 7:30, go. It's the coolest thing that you could ever do and so authentic. Yeah, if you haven't been, you should go. The question, okay, my parents had a double door to their bedroom with like an airlock of 6 inches in between and bolts on one door. That's the house we live in now. And when I was little, I would be like, why would anybody have a big locks? I'm like, why would I have 2 doors to your bedroom? And we just used to go flying in there and like land in the bed. And if okay, so you were going to be intimate, I'm going to be intimate. I can remember how my parents' bed smelled. I'd just be like, God, I love the way their bed smells. Now you know. So yeah, that's double doors. It's all still there. And like we had babies in there and, bassinets and, bye Nancy, it was great to see you. She's not going. People show up out of the woodwork. I haven't seen in a million years. So, and as far as my husband is concerned, so different from my parents. Oh God, there's such a good story though. My mom was doing, she would narrate live at the Met. So the first time my husband ever met my mother, we were supposed to meet her at the fountain at the Met, and my mother, usually in sweats and whatever, and like very, very normal, was dressed to the nines with full makeup, which she also knew how to do. And she never taught me how to put makeup on, which sucks. But so she was absolutely gorgeous. And we're supposed to be meeting for the first time, and we've been dating for quite a while. And my husband comes bounding across across to the fountain, and he comes up and he goes, I bought a suit. And I'm like, yes, you did. And he bought it from a place called Reminiscence, and he looked sort of like an orange plaid Barca lounger. And so he was looking a way that he never looked, and my mother was dressed to the nines, and so that's how they met. But my parents adored my husband would go to, they would go to concerts with just him. And they all love classical, he's a huge classical music fan as well. And so they went to see an Old English an entire reading of Beowulf in Old English together. That's how close they were. So, and as I said, he goes and reads to my mom all the time. So honestly, I don't think they got him when I first met him. They were like, huh. And then, but eventually they adored him so much. And I married a childcare professional. He was a 5th grade teacher for 30 years. So I was very smart. And he thinks I'm a goddess. Go figure. So that's my answer to that question. Thank you guys all so much.
All right. Whoa, I have everything.
And guys, there are books for sale in the reading room. We are going to form a line if you would like to buy a book, and Lucy will be signing. But again, really dignified line, guys. Thank you so much.